Give me a second. I'm sorry. I just got to hit record. It should be easier, but you got to hit about 10 buttons. You know, it always takes a little bit. I mean, whatever. I will say this nice being able to record this. So the Germanic tribes invaded, and the big thing about this was it wasn't like invasion all of a sudden it became like Germanic Britain. Which don't forget, that's one of the languages, the vernacular. Oh, I should add. Speaking of feudalism.
Oh, yes.
What is the name for the land that would be given? A fief. And what do you call somebody who has pledged their allegiance to a king or a nobleman?
Serf.
The vassal. Vassal or a liege. And then what's a serf? A serf would be what? Peasant, and the peasants are, yeah, they're like indentured servants. They're bound to the land. Almost always they would be in debt, and then they're stuck there. And we'll get to the farm system because we got to talk a little bit about all of a sudden got a little bit warmer, better crop practices, and people appeared. A lot more people at the same time as the Crusades. Get rid of the people, and then the plague hit. Well, just want to review that very quickly. So, the Anglo-Saxons would be the two biggest tribes that invaded. Sorry, drink. By the way, King Arthur, that whole legend about King Arthur is almost certainly either he was a Roman knight, which meant a Roman heavy cavalry who stayed there, or descendant of a Roman cavalry, or kind of that last remnant of Roman Britain who is trying to hold out against the invaders. That's the whole legend of King Arthur and the Round Table and the search for the Holy Grail. Great legend, but there is an element of truth. So it's some remnants of keeping with the old Roman rule. By 525, and that's an approximation, King Arthur was gone, and by then the Anglo-Saxon Jutes, they all took over. Farms, most people had moved to farms. The cities went into ruin. So Londinium almost died, and that's why, I mean, really, it became like a different city, was London, on the ruins of the old Roman city. And a lot of the native Britons went to the west, to Cornwall and Wales. And that's where you have the remnants of, they were the last Christians, so like the Druids would be in Wales. Wales, Cornwall. And they would be the areas in the Normans, the last areas the Normans would conquer would be Wales, and that's why they built these amazing castles in Wales. Don't mess with us, look at our castles. And the remnants of Old English would be there, and that's Welsh, which is an awesome language, would be there, and when the Normans would finally fully conquer Wales, they would force them to speak English. And it's a big deal in Wales for the last 30 or 40 years, or a little bit longer than that now, 50 or 60 years, that they brought Welsh back and they're starting to learn Welsh again. And to English speakers, Welsh is really kind of amazing because it's just a bunch of consonants. And most Welsh do not speak Welsh all that often. I've experienced it once. So my wife and I were in a place called Llandudno. I know what you're thinking. Not that Llandudno, yes. We're in Liverpool, and then we were here. We took the Magical Mystery Tour. That's another story. We're here. That's a Beatles. And it's a Welsh town. And we went to this place to, I don't know if you've ever heard of this food they have there, but a lot of people in England eat something called fish and chips. Have you heard of it? Yeah. So we were there at this place called Fish and Chips, and it's called Fish and Chips. It was actually, I think but why do all of a sudden, isn't it always like on a Wednesday a random bell comes at 1? So we're sitting in there, and we're surrounded by all these people, and they, you know, they're so nice, and we're talking to them, we're having a lot of fun, all these Welsh. and just having a blast. And they knew we were from America. You can't hide. And so they're talking to us, and then all of a sudden, I didn't realize two people came in, and they literally all shut up, and then they all started speaking in Welsh to each other. And I'm like, what the heck? And one guy goes to me, I've got you one. And they're all speaking in Welsh, and these people come up to the bar to order something, and they said no, and they left. And then they started speaking English. Well, what was that? I goes, oh, they were English. We didn't want them here. So they still hate the English. That was one of the great experiences. So, back to this. Eventually, more and more would become Christian, but still, there's going to be areas in Wales, the Highlands, up near Hadrian's Wall, and then up into Scotland. They did not convert. Some of the old Britons, you might have heard of them. Some of you referred to as Celtics. The Celts fled to Ireland. In fact, St. Patrick was an old Brit who fled and went to Ireland. And so, where are we at here? And so these are going to be the main British states. America right here, Wessex, Anglican. I know it's America. But, it's Mercia, but I would say America. But, these Anglo and these Saxon states, there's the Welsh, Old English, they're still Druids, so they worship trees. But what's going to happen is, just as they're establishing, here come the Vikings. The Viking invaders. Which once again, I repeat, the flat-bottomed boats going across here, those guys were crazy brave. A different generation, a tougher generation. My
Which
generation.
boats?
Huh?
Which boat were you on?
Huh? So many.
Oh, yeah.
So, before we get to that, though, to show how they've developed, from barbarians to a little bit more, at least learn about it civilized, but civilization is in the eye of the beholder. The Venerable Bede, in a monastery, he was a monk, he would write down, he was considered the father of English history, and he would write down a history of the British people. And so little bits mixed in with Roman history is what we know. And you also see him sometimes called, the Venerable Bede. I've read parts of it. It's really hard to read for somebody in a modern language. It's kind of a meter, because everything is kind of spoken in song. They would write in song. That's why if you read some of the Old English, you have that meter to it. It's really good to listen to. It's hard to read, at least for me personally. But he would also find the way to come up with as close as they could to the correct date of Easter, because they did not know the correct date. Because Judea was on a lunar calendar and the Romans were on the Julian calendar. So they didn't know the exact date. That's why Easter shifts to this day. And that was, in fact, the reason for calendars. They had to find Easter. The reason for calendars in Christian Europe, and that's why they would eventually prevent the calendar to the calendar way out now because of Easter. It would blow things up, that's another story. He also was a man who came up with the concept of starting, when did the clock begin, when it's zero, when he estimated the birth of Jesus. And that would become known as AD, that's CE. As it would turn out from the best that can be gleaned from Roman records, he was off by about 3 years. He was off by about 3. So zero was actually, if they're doing it by the birth there, or not zero, but day one, year one, was 3 years too late. So, a couple more things in. Here we have the Viking attacks. And Anglo-Saxon kings in Sussex and Wessex, right here also Northumbria, they were the victims. They go up the rivers and they would attack, they take the monasteries, attack cities. But the big thing is, what's the big way Vikings made money? Ransom. We didn't do much, because just of time reasons, and there's so much covered by Iraq. That came in the big way to fight the American occupation, was ransoming people. So kidnap and ransom. And they became open prey for Vikings. This is a very stylized one of them kidnapping women, but the big thing was kidnapping for ransom and stealing whatever valuables they could. And I like this map, just to give you an idea of the absolute ferocity of the raids all the way around. A little bit in Ireland, but there wasn't as much wealth there. But then, in the 9th century, an army of Vikings sailed up into York, which was the capital of Northumbria. Capital, bad way to look at, but that's where the king of Northumbria lived. One of the last areas to become Christian right here, really cool town, great railroad museum. Just random stuff I have here. Guess what I ate in York? Fish and chips. I think I had fish and chips everywhere. That's all I know. I was really creative in my diet. But then, using the rivers, the heathen army for literally the next 13 years sailed using rivers and then dragging their boats overland, part of the advantage of having flat-bottom boats, and attacked and swept all the way through down to Wessex. And it must have just been this weird thing. I mean, you think about this heathen armies coming over the horizon, and you see all these Vikings dragging their boats. It just had to be kind of surreal. But after the heathen army finally basically, the heathen army, some went back to Ireland, some went back to Norway, some stayed and just said, I'm British now, what the heck. But Alfred the Great was considered, he's the king of the Wessex, and he is the one who's credited for repelling the heathen army. He set up what's called the Burgle system, which before Charlemagne fortified walled cities. And that's kind of a cool thing when you go there and see all the walled cities. Yes, I agree, we should build a wall. That can be our final. Build a wall around Helena. Who thinks that's a good idea? Democracy works, it's unanimous. We need a moat, and if we're going to build a moat, what do we need? Alligators. Right? Of course, the way this winter's being so warm, the alligators would be fine. So, Alfred would reign at the time where they defeated the heathen horde. That is Alfred right there. There's a very stylized picture of Alfred beating back the Vikings. But Alfred the Great. And it would be his lineage that would eventually get to Harold and the kingdom that would be defeated by the Normans. So we're not going to get to, I am going to do this. So the Burgles would be the fortified cities. A lot of money took that. But then, who paid for it? This is what we got to get, the shires. The shires are the equivalent of a county. And therefore, in that county, they'd have to pay taxes to pay for this. And this is going to set up the organizational system that survives in Britain to this day. And who will do this? The shire, or the shire reeve, or the sheriff. And that's where the term sheriff comes from. It's somebody who would administer the shire to collect taxes. And for that matter, then it would be, okay, what else do you have to do? Well, collect the taxes. And who pays most of the taxes? What kind of people? Poor. Or to make sure that the most valuable land, those peasants aren't on to hunt or farm. So that's where the term sheriff comes from. And the remnants exist to this day because after the Normans came, and they basically said, you have a choice, all you sheriffs, be loyal or be dead. They would come to represent these areas, these shires. And eventually they would go to one location and meet, creating the first what? What's that? Camp? I can't remember someone listening. What? Say it again. Oh, capital. Yeah, I had in my head that you were saying camping. So I kept hearing camping. I said, why would they go camping?
Camp's been a long time.
Yeah, it's in London, but that's Parliament. That's Parliament. Then they all go camping. They set up a tent. That's where marshmallows come from. And have you heard of s'mores? They were invented by the Sheriff of Nottingham. That's true. That's math. So here's an example of some here's the first real very crude wall, eventually becoming a stone wall. And here's the remnants of a gate, and that's in Cornwall. Here's a little bit of one on a hill of a now abandoned town, and that was near Gloucester. That's one thing that's pretty cool about going there, all the old, I mean, the ruin, like, oh, there's a 1,000-year-old ruin. Don't quite have that in downtown Helena. So, we're jumping right to here. Danelaw. Danelaw involved mountain valleys. Danelaw was area of Britain that was ruled by the Vikings. Danish. By the way, Denmark's the second happiest country on earth according to the United Nations. What's the first happiest country?
North Dakota.
Wyoming. Anyone know?
Switzerland.
Finland.
Oslos.
Finns, Danes, then Norway. What about Scandinavia? Huh?
Finnish people have to pay a lot.
They do.
We get money and have kids.
Yeah, they also get significant benefits when they pay for college and healthcare as well.
Yeah, but it's really hard to get into the universities there. Like extremely. I had a
Yeah.
college exchange
Just be
student.
smart. Yeah, just get smarter. Yeah, just get smart.
If you miss it by 1 point, you're not.
Did you do that?
Yeah, they are pretty strict on that. That is true.
Then do
And you have to take a test, it's tough.
Yeah.
So, with that, and how they collect it is, it's called a vergeld. But they must pay a head tax, which is you must pay a tax at death. Sometimes it be called a death tax. And you'll see this basically, or you see a head tax. The Tsar of Russia, Peter the Great, would change that into a beer tax.
Beer tax.
Which I love. But it was very decentralized, so basically the sheriffs for the various cities would rule within this area of the Danes, and then here's Wessex. But a Wessex king, Ethelred the Unready, I know, that's better than the simple. They drove the Vikings out in 910. But the Vikings were weakening. The shock value is gone from the Vikings by 910. We have the same thing from, Great Falls. We're no longer shocked by Great Falls.
Wait, did you say the Vikings were defeated or?
The Vikings.
Because it says defeated by Vikings.
Oh. He would be driven out by the Vikings, but the Vikings will be defeated in 70 years. My fault, I jumped ahead. We're jumping right to, so we're coming to what's called the Bayou Tapestry. And what happened is, after the Vikings were driven out, there's going to be a fight for the throne of southern England. And this is going to be recorded on one of the great documents in world history. A tapestry done by Norman nuns to reflect the Norman conquest of England. And it is massive. The tapestry is about this wide, and it's about 70 feet long.
70 meters.
70 meters long, yeah. Meters longer than a foot, that's math too. It's in the church in Bayou. Bayou, in fact, if you ever get a chance, Bayou is pretty amazing. Because Bayou is right here. And if you're ever going to go to, let's say, the Normandy beaches for D-Day, Bayou is just behind where the British and Canadian beaches go, Gold, Juno, and Sword. And so Bayou is right there. I stayed at my wife and I stayed at a place in Bayou, and we had dinner with, they brought a dinner at this bed and breakfast, and the dinner was, your choices were rabbit or cow's head.
What's your name?
I went to England at fish and chips. But actually, one night we had rabbit.
Wow.
The second night, we went to another place.
Let me guess, fish and chips.
When they come out with a plate with literally it's a cow's head, a calf's head. I'm not used to that. I'm for eating every part of the animal, you're going to kill them. But it's a little disconcerting.
Beans and toast.
I think we had a donor. So, what it's talking about is Edward, who was the king of Sussex in southern England. He promised the Duke of Normandy, William the Bastard, promised him to become king of England. Remember, William took over after Rollo, and they got the land in Normandy. These are the Norman Knights. And it's right here. Now, I originally set this up, and then I found something amazing. So, the Bayou Tapestry is this incredibly long tapestry that goes through the entire thing all the way to William's invasion. We are going to watch a video of it.
Yeah.
So this goes through it, and there'll be a couple things I'll have you jot down, but it's an amazing story. And if you get a chance, it's at the church in Bayou, and you go, and they have the original one where you go through the entire tapestry of replica, and it shows exactly what happened. That's we wrote on there. And then you wait in line to this specially climate-controlled room and see the real thing. And I'm not exaggerating. I'll say it again. It's one of the best things I've ever seen.
It's still one piece.
Yeah. It's remarkable how good it looks and how colorful it is. It's just absolutely remarkable. And you know, I've been to Jordan, Montana. I've been to Circle, Montana.
Circle.
The Grays.
I've seen the Grays, and this is even better than that. I've been to an airport in Houston, Texas. All right, here we go. That's it. Okay, hope you enjoyed it. A comet flew over and was seen as an omen. Let's backtrack because we were so busy. I was trying to get the sound down. I jumped the gun in there. Let me explain one thing really quick. William was promised to become king, but he was French. Well, he was Norman. And when Edward died, who promised him king, all the noblemen of England gave it to Harold, who is Anglo. He's an Anglo-Saxon. He's an Anglo. So let's get back to this. So it goes to this whole thing about carrying weapons to the troops. They're going to invade England. I'll explain to you to the battle a little bit too. Do you see a great advantage the Normans got from the Mediterranean by this time? Do you see it?
Yes, right in front of us.
What about the horse? You see it?
Oh.
The stirrup.
Oh, sure.
Think what a great advantage that gives cavalry if you can lock your feet into around the horse. So you can hack down and they can't pull you down easily. Anybody has ridden a horse, you know how hard it would be without stirrups. Or if you're like me, it's hard with stirrups. But here, Hastings. You have to write down Hastings. Let's backtrack. By going forward. So, Harold the king of this Anglo-Saxon kingdom, combining Mercia, Wessex, this area right here. He's here. While he's waiting for William the Conqueror, there's Hastings. He hears that the Vikings have reinvaded up here at York, partially led by his angry brother. And so he's got to march, as Harold Hagragian, marches north, and they defeat them at Stamford Bridge. Harold defeats the Vikings at Stamford Bridge. And then, literally, after a massive battle on September 25th, 1066, he's got to turn around in less than a month and march all the way down to Hastings to fight William. Now back to the Bayou. Now, Harold's army's up on a hill, and they're ground shoulders, men at arms, and they use their shield and create a wall. So the idea is the cavalry will bash their head, but horses don't like to run into spears. And so that's will hold their own. The problem is they're taking a lot of casualties. But so is William. And Harold can still win. And this is literally one of those totally different. They did not flank him yet. What happened was this. They kept attacking against the shield wall. The Norman knights retreated. And what did Harold's men think?
They were running away.
They're running away. And they break their wall and start chasing them. And then the Normans go around them. If they would have stayed in their shield wall, literally different course of history, we would be speaking Bulgarian now. Yes.
Wasn't William mistakenly killed during this?
No.
Like they thought he was dead, but
There was a rumor, yeah. But he did not, he lived. Harold is hit by an arrow in the eye. It goes through his helmet into the view section, hits him here, and Harold dies. And what do the men do?
they run away.
And thus, the Battle of Hastings in 1066. Did we finish the battle? This is so, for example, recognize that? That's the invasion. Here's the shield wall. William does fall off his horse, which is shown right here, but did not die. See William falling off right there. And then that's the arrow in the eye. It almost looks like he's going like, meh. But no, it hit him and he grabbed it and then he
Are
died.
you sure he grabbed it? He just stabbed himself.
And then you see right here, Harold Rex, which is king. That's pretty cool. I enjoyed that one.
Apatosaurus Rex.
Oh wait, everyone back. I promise, Limbo, I'm here to deliver.
I kind of like how during the battle they're just like with their swords, just.
Limbo is light.
Limbo! Yes. Harold.